that big question, what if, should we have bullied him into going more, you know? Should we have told him to get to the doctors after 2 months, you know? And I think life gets in the way, because you just continue, and you just think, oh, I'm just on the treadmill, I'll just keep going, I'm fine. And then, I mean, that was 8-9 months down the line. Too long. He basically, you know, had a cough for quite a little while, and we thought he was just run down and he was very tired. So eventually he went to the doctors, but left it maybe a good 8 months before actually thinking there might be something wrong. We put that down to him working too hard, you know, and just not sleeping well. He wasn't sleeping well either. I thought maybe it was the stress of work, but he just, I noticed the tiredness was probably the biggest thing, if I'm honest. The cough was persistent, but not, you know, he had good days and bad days, and really that's why we thought it was just something that just he couldn't shift. And then eventually, after a lot of nagging, he went to the doctors.
He's not the sort of person who would have gone to the doctors though anyway, so like over anything.
I think men just don't want to, they don't want to be seen as weak by going to the doctor. It's just this whole persona about not being healthy and I'm okay, let's not speak about it. I mean, I didn't actually know about it until, I think it must have been 4 months maybe, because it wasn't a extremely persistent cough. You know, it wasn't something that you'd be like, oh my goodness, you need to go and get that seen, you know. Paul was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2013. We were told at the start that the prognosis wasn't great, that it was, you know, 5 years at the most, possibly another couple of years if you were lucky, if the treatment worked. But I don't think anything prepares you for that. The consultant there was very, very blunt, just told it as it was, and basically said, he needs his lung out and it needs to be out ASAP. We don't really think there's any other choices. Your other choice is to go down the chemo route, but if he does that now, the chances of it spreading to the other lung and through his body are very high. 1.5 years later, after the op, we then discovered that there was something in the other lung, which, well, it was devastating, because you go with hope. So from there on, it just went from chemo, which he really was not well with. He did not take to chemo at all. He ended up in hospital because he was so ill from the chemo. He wasn't eating, or he'd lost copious amounts of weight. And then he kind of perked up a wee bit after the 3 years. He had a round of chemo which seemed to have shrank the 2 pieces that were in his other lung. So that was a bit more positivity and kept him going for a little while longer. Then it came back again on our 6-monthly checkup, because we'd gone down to the 6-month checkup by then, and it had come back in various places. So they then suggested radiotherapy. Oh no, I think that's when everything went kind of downhill. It just totally wiped him out. First rounds, he was fine, and then 6 months later, there was more signs of more activity, and it come back in another few places, and they wanted to totally zap him, totally. So it was intense for 2 weeks, and then he ended up in hospital. He just couldn't cope, and then the depression hit, and that's the first time that I've ever actually seen him be honest about the way he felt.
I went along to the hospital to see him, and it wasn't my dad. It's really hard to see someone go from being such a dry sense of humour to just like this constantly 24/7, and him still saying he doesn't want to be here anymore.
His first wish was to die here, which in hindsight is like great, and it's a nice thing for you to be able to do, to make sure they're comfortable, but
and you want to respect what
they want, but it was the most horrific experience that we've had. When you think of a death at home, you think of a peaceful death, and it just wasn't. Whereas I feel if he'd been up at the hospital under medical supervision, I would have felt that I had done everything I could, because the nurses were in control of the medical side of stuff. I changed everything in the room. That was the first thing that I had to do in order for me to get back in there. We spent the first month sleeping on a mattress downstairs because we couldn't go upstairs.
For me, the memory of being in that room, it never, I couldn't think of anything like happy or anything like that within the first, I'd probably say 18 months. That's all that would come back to me. He was the most healthiest, fittest man, never smoked, just the opposite to